Hello, loved ones. I'm Chris Heaton, and this is Random Acts. All right. Welcome to this episode of Random Acts. Now, this time, I'm really going to try to color outside the lines. I'm telling you. I mean, I got some really random stories. Got a really great guest today. His name is John. I'm going to talk about him in a few minutes. But the 5 things I want to talk about today, to you, not about you, but I might talk about you later. But right now, my intention is to be an indomitable, unstoppable tidal wave of joy and love. Now, I try to do that because I try to be nice to people. You know, even when I flip people off in the car, I try to do it with a smile, just to keep the spirit of joy and love going, Okay, so here's one. So my neighbors here in Virginia, really nice family. And when we first moved into the house, they had a couple of dogs. They were, I think, Australian shepherd dogs or something, whatever. And so one day I'm out and I'm asking my neighbor, I said, dude, so, what are your dogs' names? And I heard him say, well, that one's Quincy and this one is Aretha. And I thought, well, how cool is that? He's named them after Quincy Jones and Aretha Franklin. So I go on about my business. I go and I tell my wife, Jean, I said, this is so cool. They must be really big music lovers next door because they named their dogs Quincy and Aretha. So a couple of days later, I saw my neighbor outside. And I said that to him. I said, it's great to live next to people who love music so much. And he looked at me with like deer in the headlights look. And I'm like, because, you named your dogs, Quincy and Aretha. And he's like, no. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, well, I named the male Quincy for John Quincy Adams, the second president of the United States. And Louisa is the dog, the girl dog's name, because that was John Quincy Adams' wife. And I thought, wow, I'm out of my league. But, maybe it was just because I don't hear so well. But anyway, Quincy and Aretha. Okay, so you may not know this about me, but in the late 70s, I was in a band called High and Mighty. And yes, we thought we were. Well, one of the great gigs that we got to do, great because I've got thousands of stories from this. We went and played a month-long gig in Saudi Arabia. This was in 1978. Yeah. And a lot of stories around that, but the basic gist to it was that all these American families living there, they had kids that would come home from school every year during the summer, had nothing to do. Well, our agent happened to meet one of the heads of that company, Aramco, and suggested to him, why don't you bring some bands over for the summer for entertainment for the kids? And one thing led to another, and we ended up in Saudi Arabia. Well, we had a Saudi Arabian guide who was there to keep us kind of in line. He was sort of like our tour guide. And of course, his name was Muhammad, of course. And he wore the typical headdress and the robes and everything. I mean, he was a really nice guy. But whenever he would hang out with us, he'd say, I want you to help me. And we're like, help you what? And he says, I want to learn how to cuss. And we're like, what? And he said, yeah, I want to learn how to cuss like you guys. You guys cuss really well. So we set about to try to teach Muhammad how to cuss. And it turned out reasonably well. About 2 weeks into the trip, it was a Saturday morning, Mo came and met us at the house. And we said, hey, Mo, it's Saturday. We don't have a gig today. What are we going to do? What can we do? And he smiled real big and stood and looked at all of us and says, I don't give damn shit. So we didn't do a great job of teaching him how to cuss, but, anyway, he got the gist of it. Okay. My mother, who passed away a couple of years ago, and I miss her every day, she was a indomitable, unstoppable tidal wave of love and joy. I'll tell you what, she really was. Well, when I was growing up, I was about 5 years old, and I'm playing outside, and I'm splashing around in a mud puddle, and I'm like getting soaking wet. I mean, just like soaking wet. I'm having a blast. Well, about that time, the furnace guy, the service guy from the furnace company pulled up because apparently they had an appointment to clean the furnace or whatever. Well, my mom comes outside to meet him, and she sees me, and she invites the guy in and says, there's the stairs, sends him down the basement. And then she comes out and she's like wreaking havoc with me. She's like going, what in the world are you doing? This is crazy. You got to come inside. But before you come inside, take your pants off because they're soaking wet. And then just go up and do something in your room. So I did. I took my pants off outside, and I went up, and I'm fooling around in my room, just kind of doing whatever. My mother's on the main level of the house, and she hears something in the basement, and she's like, I guess she forgot that the furnace guy was there, because she goes and opens the basement door and says, are you down there running around without your pants on? And the poor furnace guy said, no, ma'am, I'm down here fixing the furnace. So anyway, that was one of the stories about my mom. Okay. I got more stories, but I'm going to save them for a rainy day because, the thing of it is we're all storytellers. We're all either part of a story or we're creating a story. And today's guest is no different. John Mural paints murals. I'm not making this up. John Mural, who is my guest today, paints murals. And there's some beautiful murals that Mural has created in all of Southwestern Virginia. And if you haven't had a chance to see them, I hope that you will. But he's going to tell you where you can see these things and how you can enjoy his art. So hang on one second, and John Mural is going to join me here. Because, there's always been some kind of through line in my whole life. Music or art, but it's all random acts. So hang on, John will be here in a second. All right, friends and neighbors, I told you it was going to be good. Today, I got my new best friend. Well, I think we are best friends, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, my new best bud right here, John Mural. John, how you doing?
I'm doing great today, man.
Okay, so like I told the people a little bit earlier, you paint murals.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. My last name's Mural. I paint murals. It's a wild business, a wild world out there, man.
Okay, so then the question begs, how did you get into it? What was the seed that made you want to get to create the art that you do?
Yeah, so for me as an artist, I've been all over the place, man.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes in the past I wanted to do studio works that were 12 by 12 inches, and now I'm doing walls that are 50 feet, 60 feet tall, 180, 200, 300 feet long, these crazy canvases, if you want to call them canvases. Yeah. But, it's an interesting story. Yeah. For a long time, I did these little tiny hyper-realistic charcoal drawings.
Yeah.
And I'd ship them all over the country. I had a great time doing that. Saw some success. But essentially, I'd put my artwork in a box, send it all the way across the country. It'd come back in a box. Maybe it would sell, maybe it wouldn't. And I'd never get to go to the show, never get to talk to anybody.
Right.
I'm a people person, and so I thought, well, what might be a good way to use the gifts I have? And I did a few smaller murals, and I started loving it. I love the artwork, but I love the people.
Mm-hmm.
I think the aspect of a public artist, being able to chat on the job,
right,
is one of the best things that I get to do every day. So making a long story short, that's kind of how I transitioned into that.
So is it kind of like if you're a musician and you're playing on stage, you get that immediate feedback. Either it's people cheering or people not paying attention to you, whatever. But is it kind of the same thing?
Oh yeah, yeah. I like to think of being a muralist as almost being a performer.
Mhm.
You know, I think a lot of muralists, professional muralists that do this all over the country, international muralists as well, they get invited to certain cities and mural fests, and they travel quite a bit. And the expectation, you're not just there for the final product. You're there to perform.
Yeah.
You're there to entertain. People want to see you slinging paint around and, twirling your spray cans in your hands and all this crazy stuff, you don't see it every day.
Right.
And so, yeah, we're performers, it's very similar, like you said.
That's amazing. So right now, the ones that I know of, it's mainly in Southwestern Virginia. Is that right? Or are there other places where you've done it too?
Sure. Yeah. Well, right now, I'm from Southwest Virginia. That this is my home. So I'm just starting to dip my toes into some other areas. I got to travel to Brazil last year and paint,
wow.
which was really, really cool. And I've done some stuff around the state as well. But the longer I do it, the more I'll be traveling. I've been blessed enough here to really be able to develop a following and a support system. And man, I love the people here in Roanoke. They're so cool, man.
I dig it. I'm right there with you. So, do you have a support team when you go to do these murals? Are there people around you that are like assistants and that kind of thing?
I have a friend who assists me sometimes. Most of what I do is a one-man show. I don't necessarily hire out a team. A lot of artists will, especially the ones that travel a lot internationally. They'll travel with 2 or 3 people. For me, I'm not right there yet, but I do have people in my corner. I have a guy named Corey Hunley, who's my drone guy. He's amazing. I've worked with a lot of other locals here who have supported me, an assist whose name is Andrew, that's helped me as well, and developed this really cool network, here in Roanoke and outside of Roanoke, of these people in the industry that, I can rely on if I need that little extra bump along the way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, so one of the things I saw recently, the one called the welder.
Oh, yeah.
So, excuse me, there's like a crane involved.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me about that. Well, first off, so, I mean, you look like a pretty rugged guy, a pretty tough guy.
Yeah.
But, you're on a platform that's moving and you're wielding spray cans. I mean, tell me about that.
Man, it's, I'll tell you what, I love being on a lift, and some of these lifts, there's 100 different type of lifts and platforms you can get on. I started painting on lifts, about 3 years ago. Actually, in a project locally, I got to assist on a really large mural with where 2 international artists came to Roanoke to paint, which was really cool. They came in from Germany, and they painted a mural on the Freedom First building of a rock climber. You may have
I've seen that. Yeah, I saw it, in fact, coming today.
Yeah. It's probably the largest mural, I'd say, in Roanoke. And the 2 artists that traveled here to do it, they paint all over the world. They're in Hawaii, Fiji, who knows, Timbuktu. Oh gosh, I don't know how they survive. But yeah, so they came in to little old Roanoke, and one thing led to another, and I got to assist them on the project, and that was the first time I'd ever been on a lift. And the really cool thing was we had 3 of them, so we played musical chairs together on the wall for 11 days, and they taught me how to use the lift. Really, threw me to the sharks. Day 1 I got there, I said, so where do you want me to paint? They said, right up there in that corner. And they put me as far from the ground as I could go. And I said, man, I haven't been on a lift. And they said, this is the best way to learn, brother. And I said, okay.
Wow.
So yeah, ever since then, I love being on lifts, man. It's
so do you operate the lift yourself?
Okay. Yeah. A lot of the swing stages, some of those, the ones that kind of dangle down from like these skyscrapers and stuff, those are operated by someone. But most of the lifts that you get from the ground, you operate yourself, so you're in a bucket. It's this little control systems, and it's so cool, man. You go up, and if you're having a hard day, man, you just take it all the way up, and you just look at the mountains, and you feel a lot better.
So you're like Bob the Builder growing up.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's great.
So when you first started doing it, and what I'm trying to formulate a question, because there seems to me there's got to be some sort of a vision that when you look at a blank wall and you're talking to, I guess, to a client about what they want, when does it start to come into focus for you? Do you do drafts beforehand?
Yeah, sure. So, I have my own process, and, I'd say every muralist has a different process. If we're talking about design, if I were to show you my phone, there'd be a lot of pictures of some blank, dingy, disgusting walls that you would see. And you say, who is this weirdo? They'd probably see me on the side of the road. Why is this guy taking a photo of that wall? So I have a long library of photos in my phone. So it kind of starts there, driving around or looking around. I can even get on Google Maps and look if I'm in a different city, and kind of check out, well, what would be identify some good walls, My first thing I always try to do is sketch the wall. I love to sketch on site. That is the best.
And you actually do it on the wall.
Well, eventually I paint on the walls, but I'll get my sketchbook out, my pencils, just take it back old school and go draw right there, find a nice little comfortable spot. And that's the best way to do it. You want to feel the environment, as a muralist, you're not a studio artist. So you want to be out in the elements. You want to be in the environment. You want to know how the people on the road are perceiving it, or the people walking by, and you can't do that necessarily from just a photo. So it's great to be able to really sketch on site. And then I'll go back and I'll start to work digitally on my iPad and put together, a variety of different sketches and work my way into something that's a little bit more established. And then I'll show, whatever client I'm working with, hey, this is what I'm thinking, and then we narrow it down a little bit. Sometimes they love it. Sometimes they hate it. Sometimes I'll do a sketch and I'll use it on a totally different wall, and so it's all about being adaptable. Man.
Yeah. Is there ever a point where it's like the point of no return?
Yeah.
Where they go, I'm really not digging this, and you go, well,
Yeah.
I mean, does that ever happen?
Oh yeah. Sometimes I tell people too, not every wall needs a mural. I have people come out. You want to paint a mural on this? And I'll say, what are we trying to say here, or who are we trying to get it engaged in this? Who's going to see this? And the coolest part about most murals is they're public. You don't have to pay money to see them. You can be walking your dog or riding your bike, and that is so amazing to me. You don't have to go to a gallery or go pay money to enter somewhere to see the artwork. So that's what just makes me pumped about it.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, so let me rewind a little bit. You talked about you're kind of, because you're there and the public's around, it's performance art in a way. But also, one of the things that intrigues me in the arc of my whole random acts thing is we're all storytellers. We're all either telling a story or we're part of somebody else's story. You're telling a story with all of these murals, aren't you?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, for me, I've very consciously decided so far not to limit myself to one style. Believe it or not, I've only been doing this for about 5 years. So I didn't pick up a spray can until 4 or 5 years ago, and trust me, it's been baptism under fire at times to try to learn the craft, because it's very unforgiving. But I will say, by trying a variety of styles, it has really pushed me to understand where I want to start to transition my craft. And the cool thing is, just like you mentioned, Chris, was telling stories. For me, a lot of what I want to do moving forward is focus on, telling stories within our region, not just Roanoke, but all the Blue Ridge, the region of Appalachia. This extends to multiple states. And I just think it's such a cool fusion of cultures, and there's so much rich imagery that can be put into murals in so many localities. And that to me is really inspiring. So a lot of what I want to do is continue in that thread of telling stories about people, maybe even legends, who knows, get a little funky with it. That's the plan. So, yeah.
So as you're going through this, doing different ones all the time, are you cataloging them somewhere like in some sort of like maybe a coffee table book or anything like that? Have you thought about that?
I have a lot of photos
Yeah.
that I've taken or other people have taken. Like I said, sometimes I'll hire professional photographers to come out on site. That's a great idea. Someday I think that'd be a fantastic thing to do. Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be cool for you to do.
Yeah.
As I was saying that, though, my question then was, how do you take something that's of that scale of a lot of these that you have done that are really, really large, which makes them, I mean, that's part of the experience. I wonder how that would translate to a book. I don't know. I'm just spewing right now.
Sure. And, it's like anything. When you photograph anything, let's say you go to the mountains or the beach, these are vast, wide open spaces, but they still photograph well. I think a lot of it is what you put around it in terms of the murals, having a little tiny car that's driving by in the photo or me, I'm 6'2", I'm not a small guy, but having me standing in front of it, you get a context for how big these things are. And like you just mentioned, the piece I just did of the welder, that was a really cool piece. You got sparks shooting everywhere and this explosion of light, coming off of, the action of welding. And there's a photo of me standing right there in front.
And you're like that big?
Yeah, I look like I'm the size of one of these sparks. And it's, stuff like devices like that are ways to just translate these massive productions into something that is understandable if you can't visit it in person.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, it's so very cool. And you also mentioned in the performance aspect of it. Does it ever get to the point when you're trying to paint and some guy's going, "Hey man, what the heck's going on?"
Yeah.
Do you ever just want to go, "Really?"
Hey, it's nice if I'm on a lift, I can always, take her up for a few minutes if I need to.
I hear you.
But no, to be honest, man, I love talking to people, and I think that's a part of, being a muralist is you're out there, you're on the streets, you're amongst everyone, you're fielding questions, you're making people comfortable with it. Here in Roanoke, we really didn't have a whole lot of public art. We had some really good public art, but not a variety of it, even 5 years ago.
Right.
One cool thing I've been allowed to do with the city of Roanoke now is I can identify other artists from out of the area, and I'm starting to bring them in. And so when walls are pitched to the city, sometimes the city will ring me and they'll say, "Hey, John, do you have any muralists outside of the area in mind that we might be able to bring in?" And that's really, really cool. Just recently, this past week, I had the opportunity to bring an artist in from Virginia Beach,
cool.
Christina Wingchow, and her work is amazing. And she just did this very unique piece which complements the styles we already have, which kind of spreads it out. It gives people different visuals to see other than just my work or other local artists' work or other even international artist styles that are here. So I think it's about cultivating that environment at this point where, everybody's really excited for the next new thing.
Oh, yeah.
But they don't all look the same.
Right.
I think that's really cool.
Well, and I think that's important too. I mean, I think the whole variety thing. But jumping back again to the guy coming up, the way that I just described it a few minutes ago, that's cynical Chris over here talking. Yeah. But the beauty of it is, to me, is when somebody comes up while you're actually creating that art and you take the time to stop and talk to them, you are giving them a gift. You are taking the joy that you're experiencing and putting on that wall, and you're sharing some of that with this guy or this lady. And that's like beautiful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And, for me, sometimes it can be a distraction, but I don't like to think of it that way. I think of it as a inspiring break, we'll call it.
Yeah.
But it is fulfilling, and to feel the support and the love of people coming by is great, but it's also just as great when I have somebody come up and they are a cynic, And I think in my head, I'm going to convert you. Yeah, and then, after a few weeks, they might come back to that same wall when it's getting close to being done. And 9 times out of 10, they come back and they say, "Man, this is really cool." and that's great for me. I have a history in education. I was a high school teacher
Oh, wow.
yeah, for close to 10 years. I taught art classes in the city high schools. And, for me, that idea of taking someone that might not be comfortable with something and showing them a whole nother side, the whole other side of that coin's really, really cool.
That's so beautiful. I mean, and again, one of the great things that I get out of doing these podcasts is I get to meet people like you, and I get gifts like that right there, which is you're opening doors for people. You're letting them see a beauty in something that they may have walked right past and not even seen it. Dude, thank you so much for being on here. Before we finish up, where can people find you on social media so they can see some of your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at John M. Draws. That's Jon M. Draws. Facebook, John Mural. It's not Mural, it's Mural. Yeah, Murrill. But yeah, give me a follow. I post a lot of either where I'm at or the processes. And, it's really cool to see not just the finished product, but the process of how these things come together, so check it out. Yeah.
Yeah, man, I will. And I'll hope that everybody else will. Hey, thank y'all for tuning in. John, thank you for being here today.
Sure.
And I look forward to seeing more work outside.
Yeah, man, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Beautiful. Woo! Man, wasn't that great? Yes. So be sure to check him out on Instagram, John, Jon M. Draws, John M. Draws. And he's got some great stuff. And when you're driving around Southwestern Virginia, be sure to check out those murals too. Okay. I got one more story and then I'm out of here. So I'm always trying to be better. I'm always trying to be nicer. I'm trying to be more patient. And I'm just trying to figure out my path through this crazy life. And so as a lark, I was driving through town one day and I saw this fortune teller's building. And it said, come in and I'll read your tarot cards. And I'm like, well, I've never done that. Might as well give that a try. So I go in and it's just like you think. There's beads everywhere. And this woman comes out. She's got a shawl on. I mean, the whole nine. Whether it was for real or not, it didn't matter. I mean, to me, it was the whole concept. So I told her what was going on. She said, well, come on, let me read your cards. So we sit down and I'm telling her, I got this going on and this going on and this going on. And she's reading the cards and she flips one of them over and she says, well, it does look like you have, a few problems in your life. They're not really big, but there are some problems in your life. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I got some things going on. She's looking at the cards a little more and she turns one more over and she says, well, it looks here that some of these problems you may be the cause of. So I just looked at her and said, bitch, you need to reshuffle those cards. No, I didn't really say that. Anyway, hey, I'm Chris Heaton. I want to say thank you for being here. I hope that I can continue to bring guests that you enjoy, like John today. I hope you got a kick out of him. I can tell you, I sure did. I hope you enjoy his artwork. I hope that you can enjoy the kinds of things that we bring. Don't forget, please don't forget, I've got a book out, Dapper. It's a guide for gentlemen and the ladies who love them, and a book on a subject I know nothing about, Confidence on the Fly. Please, please, please pick them up at Amazon.com. I'd love for you to have a copy. Also, I want to remind you that I've got this new project called The Song Inside You. And if you're a songwriter of a certain age and you're looking to do something to level it up and have a really good experience in Nashville, please reach out to me. It's thesonginsideyou.com. Go there and you can reach me there. Follow me on Instagram at Chris J. Heaton. Follow me on Facebook at Chris Heaton Music. And please, please, please come back for the next episode of Random Acts. Thank you. Are we done here?